Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with T.R. Rowe. I'm your host, State Representative T.R. Rowe. I represent the town of Trumbull in the Connecticut General Assembly, and I'm very happy to have with me a special guest today, Major Michael Downs. Welcome, Major. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, ordinarily, we stuff this show with politicians and talk politics, but we wanted to take a bit of a break from that and talk about something that you and I both think is a pretty interesting topic, but it's the first company governor's horse guard.
Right.
And it's something that perhaps most folks don't know much about. So why don't we talk a little about it and tell us first of all what is the first company governor's horse guard? What do you do? How did you get involved? And we'll go from there.
Sure. The first company governor's horse guard is one of the 4 organized militia units under the Connecticut National Guard. Our unit was formed in 1788, chartered by the Connecticut General Assembly then, and initially was formed as an independent volunteer dragoon company, which would escort the current governor of the state of Connecticut when there was 2 capitals in the state. There was the capital in New Haven, and then there was the capital in Hartford. Eventually, the second company governor's horse guard, which is here in Newtown, was founded in 1808. They used to escort the governor and members of the General Assembly during the parts of the year where they would come up to Middletown, and then we would take over to bring them to Hartford and back and forth after that. So that's how it was founded initially. First 100 years of the governor's horse guard, primarily ceremonial. We did escorting of dignitaries like General Washington, Marquis de Lafayette, President Andrew Jackson, President Theodore Roosevelt.
Now, when you say you escorted them,
right?
What would that? I mean, the obvious comes to mind, but what would that consist of? Would there be a
there would be a mounted
guard?
There would be a mounted honor guard escorting all of those dignitaries.
Right.
It would be very formal and very ceremonial, and it was generally, that was the bulk of what the governor's horse guard did at that time. In 1911, the troop decided to become part of the Connecticut National Guard and became Troop B Cavalry. And after that, they were federalized into service 3 times. The first time was in the search for Pancho Villa at the Mexican border, and that was in 1916.
And you didn't find him?
Didn't find him. No one did.
But that's interesting. So the Connecticut Governor Horse Guard in the early 1900s, just a little more than, about 100 years ago,
right,
a little less than 100 years, was federalized or nationalized?
Right, just for those particular conflicts.
And you were brought down, however many of you there were at that time, brought down to the Mexican border.
Right. And we were down there stationed in Arizona and participated in the search with the U.S. Cavalry looking for Pancho Villa. The second time we were federalized was as part of the Yankee Division in World War I and saw service dismounted in France. And the third time was as part of the 208th Coastal Artillery Regiment, which was stateside, and that was during World War II.
So you have, in the past century, had 3 separate instances where you really were in combat zones.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'll bet you 99% of the people out there didn't know that. And you're part of the National Guard now, as you said.
That's
so,
right.
You're still subject to being called up, presumably.
Well, we're purely state service, so we wouldn't be federalized if there was a need to federalize us for any reason. All of the members they're all volunteers, so they would have the option of being in or out.
And that was the case, though, in the past, correct?
Correct.
When you were nationalized or federalized. Yes. So right, if something came up, it could happen just as it did 3 times in the 1900s.
Sure,
right?
Conceivably. I mean, being part of under the direction of the Adjutant General of the state of Connecticut, we're subject to the military laws of the state of Connecticut. We serve under Chapter 504, 27-8, which makes us available to the governor and the Adjutant General in cases of war, invasion, rebellion, or riot.
Well, yeah, and why don't we talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get back into the horse guard. But
sure,
an overview of how the Connecticut National Guard works, and you talked about the Adjutant General, and of course the governor is, well, what would her title be?
She's the commanding, she's the Captain General would be her technical title. but she's the Commander-in-Chief of the Connecticut Armed Forces.
So when you see the governor, and you're in uniform, you salute.
Absolutely.
Right. So you're one of the 4 militia divisions, if that's the right.
Militia units were each companies. The 2nd Horse, which is in Newtown, is one, and the 1st and 2nd companies of Foot Guard are the other 2 units.
Now, locally, only maybe a mile or 2 away from these studios is the 2nd company. So what's the connection between the 2 of you? You're probably going to tell us that the 1st Company Horse Guard is first for a reason, and we don't have the point-counterpoint, but tell us if there's any interaction or if there's any differences between the 2 groups.
Sure. Obviously, we weren't the 1st company until there was a 2nd company, so we actually weren't the 1st company until 1808 when the 2nd company was founded. I continue to have and our unit has a great relationship with the 2nd Horse. They're our brothers and sisters in the militia. I have a great working friendship with Major Gordon Johnson, who's their commanding officer. And we all work together very well as part of the militia, as well as the commanding officers of the other 2 Foot Guard units. And we train together every year at Camp Rel. We have annual training in August for 1 week.
Joint training.
We do joint training, and in fact, we're even increasing the level that we do that to. Our plans to go down to Camp Rel this year incorporate a lot of joint training exercises that we hadn't done previously. So, sure, there's a little bit of a friendly competition in certain respects between the 1st and 2nd, but it's all born out of mutual respect and admiration.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. And how big is your company?
My company has 45 active members right now. 7 officers, and the rest are enlisted.
And you're the major, so you're the guy.
I'm the commanding officer, that's right.
Right. You tell I'm a civilian. So you're the commanding officer, and you answer only to the Adjutant General.
Yes, I answer directly through a military administrative officer who is under the ATAG, Assistant to the Adjutant General.
Now we have some photos, just as we talk about more about the background of the 1st Company Governor's Horse Guard. I think it's number 14 that has John Caldwell, and he was the 1st Commandant. Is that correct?
Yes. Major John Caldwell was the 1st Commandant of the 1st Company Governor's Horse Guard. His name appears prominently in the charter that was drafted at the time. He was a prominent Hartford area businessman at the time, and also was instrumental in the founding of the 1st Company Governor's Foot Guard.
And this would have been in 1780?
1788 was when our charter was granted.
Right.
I believe 1771 is when the first Foot's charter was granted. And our 2nd Commandant that immediately followed him was Thomas Seymour, and he later became the 1st Mayor of Hartford. He was a dragoon commander in the Revolutionary War. There is a fairly famous painting by Jonathan Trumbull of the Surrender of Burgoyne, where you can actually see Thomas Seymour in his dragoon uniform on horseback. In fact, he's the only figure that's mounted on a horse, fittingly.
Fittingly, sure. Sure, that's neat.